friends, it's Christy back with you on the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the new We Make a Great Combo set. So I have stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Extreme Black Hybrid ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm starting with my French fry container, and I wanted to use reds for that. So I went with R22, R24, R29, and R39. So I'm starting on the outside edges with the R39 because the front of a French fry container is usually bowed out a little bit. It would be catching the light down the center. So that's why I'm putting my shadows down both sides. I blended out the R39 with the R29, and now I'm coming in with the R24 and just taking that color a little bit more toward the center. If you wanted to, you could pare this down to 3 choices of color combos. You could probably leave off the darkest or the lightest, but I really like how this turned out with the 4 shades. So once I have the R24 blended in, I'm going to come in with my lightest shade, which is the R22, and put a nice big highlight on that center like I mentioned. I also did make my shadows just a little bit deeper on the right hand side just because I wanted to kind of tip him on the card later on. And then I'm going to use these same shades to do the top and bottom sections of the little soda cup. So I wanted to pick 2 colors that I was going to use on all 3 of the images to just tie them all together, and then also later on when I'm using some of the building elements of the card. So I picked red and yellow for those because I just thought that's something that I've never done that I can think of on a card before, and it kind of represents ketchup and mustard, which I thought went well with this little hamburger combo meal theme. So I'm using those same exact shades in the same order on the soda cup, and I did oversaturate my paper a little bit, so I am going to get some bleeding on this guy, but I'm going to fix him later on. For now, I'm going to move on to my hamburger, and I'm just using those reds for that little sliver that is under the cheese, which I'm going to color to be a tomato. And I decided to leave off the darkest shade, the R39, for that, just to make it slightly different. And then I'm going to move on to my yellow combo, and I'm going to use Y11, Y13, Y15, and Y17. So I'm starting at the bottom of each of the fries. Since they're nestled into that little cup, they would have a little bit of a shadow cast on them where that cardboard overlaps them a bit. I'm going to take that up a little bit higher on any French fries that are kind of pushed toward the back or have other ones overlapping them, just to give them a little bit of a deeper shadow. And then I'm going to blend out the Y17 with the Y15. Just pulling that up a little bit, and then I'll come in with the Y13. The ones in the back, some of those I'm just going to fill in with the Y13, again to make them a little bit darker. But for the rest, I'm going to add in Y11 on the very top, just to give them a little bit of a highlight as well. And then for the hamburger, I decided to do the cheese with this shade. That Y17 has a bit of an orange tone to it, so I went a little more heavy-handed with that and left off the Y11 in that combo. Then I'm going to do every other stripe on my straw in my soda cup with the darkest 3 shades. And then for the other stripes, I'm just going to add a little of that Y11. And then I'm going to go to my colorless blender and just clean up some of that bleed out that I got on my little soda cup on that mid section there. Reds can be a little bit tricky to push back, so I did do this in a couple different layers. I'm just going to show you one, but I just pushed that color back over the lines, and then I would let it dry because I didn't want to oversaturate it and get more bleed out, and then, you know, go in again if I needed to. So I think I had to do it 3 times to get it cleaned up how I wanted it. And then I'm going to move on to my hamburger patty. I'm using E23, E25, and E27 for that. Using the E27 down at the bottom and then blending out with the E25. And then at the top, I'm going to fill in with the E23. And then I wanted to add a little bit of detail to this, so I'm going to add some dots just to imitate that texture of the burger. So I did that with the E27, just added a few little dots here and there, and then I wanted to darken those up with E29, just going over them once again. And then it still wasn't quite dark enough for what I was looking for, so I am going to pick a darker shade, which is going to be E49, and just add a couple extra dots with that, and I like to have that looked with the darker layer in there as well. For the bun, I'm going to use E50, E51, and E53. So I'm going to put a shadow up under the lettuce, since that's kind of hanging out of the bun. That would cast a little bit of shadow on the bottom. And then for the top bun, I'm just going to put the shadow up the sides and on the very bottom. I'm going to blend out the E53 with the E51, just bringing that in toward the center, and then I'll fill in the rest with the E50. I think this is a really nice combo for buns. It really has that bread-like look to it. For the top lid of the soda cup, I'm going to use BG10 and BG11 just to add a little bit of shading to those and leave them white for the highlight. And then I'm going to do the same thing for that center section in where the face is, just adding that BG11 first and then coming in with the BG10, bringing that toward the center and letting that fade off to white. And then I did go back in and add a little extra BG11. For the lettuce on the burger, I'm going to use YG11, YG13, and YG17. Probably 2 shades could do here as well because it's a very small section there, but I squeezed in all 3 shades. And then I'm going to bring in R000 and R20. I'm going to color the little French fry guy's tongue with the R20 and also give everybody some rosy cheeks. They're not really going to show up very well on the French fry guy, but they will on the other 2. And then I use the R000 for the inside of the French fry guy's mouth and blended out the rosy cheeks on the burger and the soda cup. Then I grabbed a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen to go over the eyes of the soda cup guy, and then I trimmed these images out with their matching dies. For my focal panel, I'm going to take the mini slimline double stitch rectangle stacks and die cut a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock. And then I'm going to grab some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink and just add that down the center. I just want it to be like a little glow behind my little characters. So I'm not taking that all the way to the outside edges, just staying right there in that center area. And then I wanted to distress that a bit, so I'm first going to take some clean water, spritz that onto an acrylic block, and then grab a thin paintbrush and tap that water onto that panel. Let that react with that Distress Oxide ink for a few seconds, and then I'm going to blot that up with a paper towel. I made sure to add a nice assortment of droplets there. And then to add a little bit more interest, I'm going to press some of that Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink onto the block, mix it with the water that was still remaining on there, and then tap that over the background as well, just to give little flecks here and there to just make it a bit more interesting, since the card base is going to be fairly simple. I didn't have the right color yellow cardstock for what I needed, so I decided to just color some in using more Distress Oxide inks. I'm using Mustard Seed ink on another panel of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock, and I'm only doing the outside edges because that's all I need. The center part isn't going to show, so I'm just going to keep that white so I have a place to hold that down with my fingers. And then I can set this piece aside to dry. Next, I'm going to work on my sentiment, and I'm using a piece of craft cardstock, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment in a darker brown ink, and I'm doing the Sending Supersized Hugs sentiment, and I will stamp that down twice to make sure it's nice and bold. And then I'm going to do an insert for the inside of my card. So I die cut that using the A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2. It's just another piece of white cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp the little hot dog image and the sentiment, "We make a great combo." I shifted the hot dog over to the right so that I can add a friend next to him. The stamps right together didn't fit, but they're just going to cross their hands over each other. So I'm going to do the soda can for the inside, and I kept the sentiment there because I wanted that to be just a little bit darker. So I'm going to ink that up a second time along with the soda can, and then it just kind of goes better with the sentiment to have two images on the inside, I think. So now I am going to glue this panel to the inside of my card base. I'm using Amarina Cherry cardstock for my card base. And I use the second largest of those A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, so we get that nice bold border of red cardstock on the outside edge of the inside. And then I'm going to glue my focal panel to the yellow cardstock and just make sure that it is on there centered. So I'm going to shift that while that glue is still wet, make sure it's on there nice and straight, and then I can adhere that to my card base. So again, we're going with that red and yellow theme to represent ketchup and mustard. And I'm going to add that over on the left-hand side just to give it a little bit of a different look. So once I have that, I can bring in my images, and I wanted to do like a little stack of these guys. So I'm just going to lay them out, make sure that I'm going to have them placed correctly. In order for them to fit, they have to like overlap their feet a little bit. I have to tuck them down. So I'm going to put the French fry guy down at the bottom, and like I said, I just tipped him the slightest bit toward the right hand side just to make the stack look a little bit more precarious. I think it adds to the whole comical scene. And then I'm going to add the hamburger guy in the center, so just getting him with his feet tucked down into the French fries. And then I'll add the soda cup guy right on top, and I tipped him just slightly toward the right again, so they're each kind of tipping in a different direction. And I had to make sure that the top of that straw fit, so I just adjusted them a tiny bit. And then I've got my sentiment strip. I just trimmed that down, and I'm figuring out the best placement for that. I did add a little strip of foam tape to the back of that to pop it up. I decided to overlap into the French fries. I felt like it looked better down toward the bottom of the card. It just gave more weight there. And that is going to finish this one off. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I think this set is so adorable, and there's so many different combinations of images that you can do. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I love chatting with you guys. Make sure that you're subscribed to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Bye-bye.